There's a certain heartbreak that feels unlike anything else. It's the quiet erosion of love, the slow fade of warmth from someone who once made you feel like you were the center of their world. At first, it's almost imperceptible. Maybe he stops calling as often. Maybe his eyes don't light up when you walk into the room. Maybe his attention, once so focused, begins to scatter. It's rarely abrupt. The shift in his energy begins subtly, almost invisibly, like a tide pulling away from shore. And yet, you feel it. When a man who once loved you starts to pull away, your first instinct is often to try harder. You give more. You accommodate more. You forgive more. You were taught that love is patience, loyalty, and effort. And all of that is true. But there comes a point when effort becomes self-erasure. When patience becomes self-punishment. There's a moment. Sometimes a dramatic confrontation. Sometimes a whisper. Inside you, when you realize he no longer loves you the way he once did. And that realization lands deeper than you expect. Before you detach, before you even take that first step away, there's something you must do that most women are never taught. You must acknowledge the pain. Pain is not weakness. It's not proof that you failed. It's evidence that something mattered to you, that you invested yourself in love. And it's crucial to recognize that pain without using it as a justification for his behavior. When a man stops loving you, he's making a choice. That choice may hurt you deeply, but it is not yours to carry or repair. Many women try to rationalize this shift. Maybe I wasn't enough. Maybe if I change, he'll come back. Maybe he's just going through something. These thoughts are defense mechanisms, stories we tell ourselves to delay facing the truth. Because the truth, that someone you gave your heart to no longer cherishes it, feels unbearable. Yet just because it hurts does not mean you're supposed to stay. Just because you feel lost does not mean he's still right for you. Acknowledging the pain is not about clinging to it. It's about facing it directly so it doesn't rule you from the shadows. It's about saying, yes, this hurts. Yes, I feel rejected. Yes, I feel dismissed. And in the same breath, refusing to let that pain become your identity. The emotional trap is believing that if you just stay longer, love harder, or suffer enough, he will return to the man he once was. But that's not how healthy love works. When someone truly loves you, you don't have to beg for clarity, consistency, or care. And when that love is gone, the longer you ignore it, the deeper your self-abandonment becomes. Emotional detachment does not begin by shutting down. It begins by feeling fully and still choosing to walk away. This isn't about becoming cold or unfeeling. It's about maturing emotionally to the point where you understand that your feelings are valid but not always rooted in truth. Pain will whisper that you've lost something irreplaceable, but wisdom will remind you that what you truly lost was an illusion, because someone who genuinely loved and respected you would never place you in a position of begging for their affection. So sit with your pain. Let it rise. Let it speak. But don't negotiate your value with it. Don't rewrite the past to make his neglect seem like a momentary lapse. Don't shrink yourself trying to fit back into a space where you were only half loved. The moment you start justifying his lack of appreciation, you begin to devalue yourself. And that is where emotional detachment dies before it even begins. The foundation of detachment is not bitterness. It's clarity. It's understanding that what hurts now is not the death of love. It's the death of an illusion. You loved, you tried, but love in its purest form is mutual. It's respect. It's recognition. And when those disappear, so must your emotional attachment. You're not walking away because you don't care. You're walking away because, for the first time in a long time, you finally do about yourself. There comes a point where you must stop looking at your feelings and start looking at the facts. You may still love him, but feelings alone cannot sustain something that no longer stands on mutual respect. When a man no longer loves you, the shift begins with a subtle erosion of respect. It fades quietly at first, then all at once. Even if you're not ready to admit it yet, respect is the foundation of emotional connection. When it's present, love flows naturally. When it's gone, even the strongest emotions become heavy, one-sided and exhausting. It doesn't matter how much history you share, how many memories you hold on to, or how deeply you believe in what you once had. Without mutual respect, you're no longer in a relationship. You're in an emotional negotiation where only one party is still participating. The mistake many women make is thinking they can earn back respect through more sacrifice, more effort, or more emotional labor. But respect is not won through submission. It's maintained through balance. The moment he stops speaking to you with care, stops listening to you with presence, or starts treating your consistency as disposable, he's communicating something deeper than words ever could. That you no longer matter to him in the way you once did. And here's the hard truth. It's your responsibility, not his, to recognize that moment as the point of no return. You cannot build emotional security in a space where you're no longer regarded as essential. The hardest part isn't walking away. It's admitting to yourself that staying has become an act of self-betrayal. You try to remember who he used to be, how he looked at you, how things felt before everything shifted. But that's memory talking, not reality. The moment you start clinging to the past to justify staying in the present, you've already abandoned your own emotional clarity. Recognizing the loss of mutual respect doesn't mean you're giving up. It means you're finally seeing things as they are, not as you hoped they would be. You can love someone and still outgrow the way they treat you. You can cherish the connection and still decide that your peace matters more than proving your worth to someone who stopped seeing it. This is emotional maturity. This is the discipline most people were never taught. To not chase love where it's no longer being returned. To not pour effort into a cup that only leaks. To not confuse loyalty with self-neglect. You'll notice it in small ways first. The indifference in his tone. The disinterest in your words. The way your presence no longer lights up his eyes. And you'll try to rationalize it. Maybe he's tired. Maybe I'm overthinking. Maybe it's just a phase. But deep down, you feel the emotional gap growing wider. The warmth turning into obligation. The connection fading into cold routine. That's not just distance. That's detachment from his end. And once respect is gone, love starts to suffocate under the weight of resentment and indifference. It's in that moment when your soul feels the absence of respect, even louder than the presence of affection, that you must choose yourself. Not in anger, not in pride, but in strength. Because staying where you're not respected doesn't preserve the relationship. It destroys your self-worth. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This applies here. If you don't consciously recognize when love and respect have disappeared, you risk letting the unconscious hope, the unconscious fantasy, run your life. Detaching emotionally begins when you stop waiting for him to return to who he was and start honoring who you need to be. When you see that the loss of his love doesn't define you, but your response to it will. The woman who chooses her peace over being tolerated is the woman who finally understands her value. Emotional detachment is not just about walking away. Physically, that's the surface level move, the visible act. But the real work, the deeper transformation, happens in your mind. It happens when you start withdrawing your emotional investment, your thoughts, your mental energy, your constant replays of what was, what could have been, and what you wish would change. Once you see the truth, that his love and respect have faded, the next step is not an outward act, but an inward one. Before you change your routines or make a big announcement, you begin by quietly taking back your energy. This is the hidden phase of detachment, the one no one sees but everyone feels inside. You stop feeding the connection emotionally. You stop offering your best self to someone who no longer values it. You begin the slow but deliberate shift from centering your world around him to centering it around yourself. Many women believe detachment happens when you leave physically, but emotional withdrawal must come first. Too many leave in body, but remain tethered in mind. Still checking his social media, replaying conversations, dissecting his tone, wondering if he misses you, wondering if he regrets it. These thoughts feel involuntary. They creep in during quiet moments and grip you tightly. If you're not careful, they keep you orbiting around a man who has already moved on emotionally. This is where the hard truth comes in. You cannot heal in the same emotional environment that broke you. Detachment isn't coldness. It's clarity. It's realizing that every second you spend mentally circling him is a second stolen from your own growth. And the only way to fully detach is to take back your energy. Not just the physical routines, but your emotional routines. The habits of fantasizing about closure, hoping for a turnaround, waiting for a sign that he still cares. Those habits are quiet forms of self-abandonment. When you stay emotionally loyal to someone who's already stopped seeing your worth, you're participating in your own neglect. You're continuing the pattern of placing his needs, his feelings, and his opinions above your own well-being. That's what makes detachment so difficult. It feels like betrayal, but it's actually self-rescue. Understand this. Your value does not decrease because someone failed to recognize it. You're not emotionally weak because you care deeply. That care, that intensity, that willingness to love, those are strengths, but they have to be directed towards someone who respects them. And most importantly, they must be preserved for yourself. So start with small but deliberate acts. Stop checking his online status. Stop imagining how he'll feel when he sees you thriving. Stop crafting scenarios in your mind where he wakes up to what he lost. Every one of those thoughts keeps you tethered to his emotional world. And that's not your world anymore. Reclaim it. Reclaim your thoughts. Reclaim your time. This isn't about pretending he never mattered. It's about understanding that he no longer gets to control the space he once occupied in your mind. And that space, your inner peace, is too sacred to lease out to someone who no longer values you. Detachment also requires discipline. You'll have moments of weakness, days when your mind slips, when you miss him, when the pain reopens. But those moments are not signals to go back. They're tests to see if you're strong enough to keep moving forward. Every time you choose your peace over your longing, you grow stronger. Every time you silence the urge to reach out, you become more grounded. Detachment is not a one-time decision. It's a repeated action, a commitment to yourself. Replace the emotional investment you gave to him with investment in yourself. Channel that energy into your purpose, your goals, your growth. Let the silence between you be filled with the sound of your own evolution. And when your mind finally starts to quiet, when the constant need for answers fades, you'll realize something profound. Detachment wasn't the end. It was the beginning of you coming back to yourself. One of the most difficult steps in emotionally detaching from a man who no longer loves you is confronting the illusion. Not the relationship as it is now, but the version you created in your mind, the one that kept you holding on longer than you should have. This illusion is powerful. It's the memory of how he used to make you feel, how things used to be in the beginning, the early days when love felt effortless and real. But that version of him, the version who looked at you with admiration, who treated your words like they mattered, who made you feel like a priority, doesn't exist anymore. And perhaps, if you're honest with yourself, he hasn't existed for a while. The danger of emotional attachment lies not in the man himself, but in the fantasy you construct around him. You romanticize his potential. You hold on to the glimpses of the past while ignoring the reality of the present. You excuse neglect, justify disrespect, and rationalize coldness and old boy because you're chasing something that once felt right. But here's the truth you have to face with brutal honesty. People show you who they are. And when their actions no longer match the connection you remember, it's not a rough patch. It's a reveal. You can't detach emotionally if you're still clinging to the version of him that lived in your hopes. That version, the one who once made you feel like you were the center of his world, no longer exists. And he may have only existed briefly, if ever. Sometimes we fall more in love with the idea of a person than the person themselves. When he starts to drift, you hold tighter, not to him, but to the dream you're terrified to let go of. But here's the reality. When you strip away the excuses, the justifications, and the nostalgia. What remains is the man standing in front of you right now. Distant, indifferent, dismissive. And if that reality doesn't reflect mutual love, mutual respect, and mutual effort, then you owe it to yourself to stop living in the fantasy. You cannot build emotional clarity on a foundation of denial. This isn't easy. Breaking the fantasy feels like grieving a second time. You grieve the man he was, and then you grieve the future you imagined with him. But detachment requires that grief. It demands that you face the truth, however painful it may be, and stop hoping for a version of him that no longer aligns with the man he's become. You cannot emotionally detach from someone you're still trying to resurrect in your mind. The process of breaking the fantasy begins when you stop interpreting his lack of effort as a cry for help and start seeing it for what it is: a lack of interest, a lack of care, or a shift in priorities that no longer includes you. It's not always malicious. Sometimes people just change. But change without communication, change without compassion, change that leaves you questioning your worth. That's not something you're meant to endure. That's something you're meant to walk away from. When you confront reality, things become simpler. Not easier, but clearer. You stop hoping for texts that don't come. You stop analyzing cold responses. You stop making excuses for the silence. And in that clarity, you begin to heal. You begin to pull your emotional energy away from him and place it back where it belongs, within yourself. Breaking the fantasy is the most liberating part of detachment. Because once the illusion fades, you stop waiting. You stop reaching. You stop needing him to be anything other than what he's already shown you. And in that acceptance, you finally find your freedom. It's not about hating him. It's about no longer needing him to be something he's not. Carl Jung said, "We cannot change anything until we accept it. Condemnation does not liberate, it oppresses." Acceptance is not approval. Acceptance does not mean you're happy about what happened. It means you're willing to see it for what it is, not what you wish it were. And that is where your power begins. This stage of detachment is not glamorous. It's quiet. It's long evenings alone. It's learning to sit with yourself. It's the deliberate act of rerouting your focus away from him and toward your own life. It's taking all the emotional energy you once poured into deciphering his moods, waiting for his messages, or trying to be what he wanted, and using it to rebuild yourself. As you begin to take back your energy and dismantle the illusion, something unexpected happens. The silence that felt so threatening at first begins to open a new space inside you. A space that isn't empty but available. This is the stage where you start to remember who you were before the relationship, before the compromises, before you muted parts of yourself just to be accepted. One of the deepest challenges of loving someone who stops loving you back is how easily your identity gets wrapped around them. It happens quietly. You start to shape your days around his moods, your goals around his support, and your sense of self-worth around his validation. When that validation is withdrawn, it feels like you're losing yourself. But the truth is, you're not losing yourself. You're seeing how much of you was on pause. Emotional detachment isn't only about letting go of him. It's about finding yourself again. It's about reclaiming the parts of you that were put on hold, muted, or completely forgotten in the pursuit of maintaining something that had already lost its foundation. When a man stops loving you, it doesn't just hurt. It shakes your identity. You start questioning your worth, your desirability, your ability to be loved. But that's not clarity. That's emotional distortion. It's the aftershock of being devalued by someone you gave too much power to. The truth is, your identity existed before him, and it will exist long after. You are not a product of how he sees you. You're not defined by his approval, his attention, or his presence. And when you begin to remember that, when you begin to see yourself outside of the relationship, you start to gain the strength needed to truly detach. You start to understand that your life has meaning that isn't contingent on being loved by him. This is where the transformation begins. You stop asking questions like, "Why didn't he see my value?" and start asking, "Why did I forget it?" That shift is everything. Because emotional detachment doesn't mean you stop feeling. It means you stop abandoning yourself to be chosen. It means you stop shrinking to fit into the narrow space he left for you. It means you rebuild your identity on something solid, your character, your principles, your purpose, not on his shifting moods or fading interest. A woman who reclaims her identity becomes powerful in the best way possible. She no longer moves from desperation or fear. She becomes grounded, focused, centered. She stops chasing validation and starts living in alignment with who she truly is. That's when the emotional hold he once had begins to loosen. Not because you forced yourself to forget him, but because you finally remembered yourself. Reconnecting with your identity requires discipline. It means spending time alone, not just physically but mentally. Turning down the noise, getting clear on what matters to you outside of him. What drives you? What excites you? What challenges you to grow? These are the questions you have to ask yourself daily. You have to become a woman whose sense of worth isn't borrowed from anyone else, especially not someone who failed to appreciate it. It also means setting new emotional boundaries, not just with him but with yourself. No more chasing. No more fantasizing. No more molding yourself into someone who might win him back. That version of you, the one who compromised her peace to be tolerated, has to go. And in her place, a new version is born. A woman who values her time, her energy, her vision. A woman who understands that love should never cost her identity. You don't heal by getting him back. You heal by getting you back. You heal by stepping back into your power, by living with integrity, by surrounding yourself with people who see your worth without needing to be convinced. And the more you return to yourself, the more his absence stops, feeling like a loss and starts feeling like a necessary turning point. This is not an instant transformation. Healing doesn't follow a straight line. Some days you'll feel strong, focused, and indifferent to the past. Other days, his memory will hit you without warning. A song, a scent, a place you used to go together. And it will sting. You'll feel that old emotional gravity trying to pull you back. That's not a sign of weakness. That's a sign that you care deeply. But caring deeply is not a reason to remain stuck. Feel it, acknowledge it, and then continue forward. Part of healing is learning how to sit with the discomfort without letting it define your actions. It means resisting the urge to reach out when you're lonely, to check his social media when you're curious, to reopen wounds just to feel something familiar. You must become the guardian of your peace. That means choosing discipline over impulse, especially in moments when your emotions try to convince you that going backward is easier than moving forward. You also have to make peace with the silence where his voice used to be, the silence where your thoughts about him used to live. That silence can feel unbearable at first, but eventually it becomes something sacred. It's in that quiet that you begin to rediscover yourself, your true self, the woman you were before the attachment clouded your vision. You begin to fill that space not with memories of him, but with purpose, with growth, with meaningful connections that reflect who you are becoming. Forgiveness plays a crucial role here. Not just forgiveness of him, but of yourself. Forgive yourself for staying too long, for loving too hard, for ignoring the signs, for thinking you could fix something that was never your burden to carry. That forgiveness doesn't make you weak. It sets you free. It allows you to stop punishing yourself for the love you gave and instead start honoring it, because the love wasn't the problem. The direction you gave it was. Carl Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. This is your chance to embrace that privilege." Detachment creates the opening. Healing fills it. And becoming who you truly are, independent of his perception, his affection, or his presence, is the ultimate reward. As you rebuild, your sense of self-worth no longer depends on being chosen by him or anyone else. It grows from within. You begin to measure your healing not by how much you miss him, but by how deeply you respect yourself. You begin to attract peace, stability, and self-worth, not because you're pretending to be healed, but because you actually are. You start to make choices from a place of self-respect. You start to fill your time with activities, people, and goals that nourish you. You begin to set goals that have nothing to do with how he might see you and everything to do with who you're becoming. And slowly the image of him as the center of your world fades. In its place emerges a stronger, freer, more grounded version of you. You also learn the difference between love and attachment. Love is mutual, respectful, and expansive. Attachment is one-sided, fearful, and constricting. Love can survive challenges. Attachment clings to fantasies. When you see this clearly, you stop blaming yourself for his withdrawal and start seeing it as a sign of misalignment, not your inadequacy. In this phase, you'll notice a change in your inner dialogue. Instead of asking, "Why didn't he love me enough?" you'll start asking, "Why did I think I needed his love to be whole?" That shift is the heart of healing. It's the difference between trying to fill a void and realizing you were never a void in the first place. And as this new identity solidifies, you become less reactive to the past. His name doesn't sting the way it used to. The memories don't flood you with longing. You can remember the good without denying the bad. You can accept the bad without denying the good. You can let both exist without either controlling you. That's emotional freedom. By the time you reach this point, something in you has shifted. You're no longer just surviving the loss. You're creating a life beyond it. Detachment was the door you had to walk through. But what lies on the other side is not emptiness. It's potential. It's the freedom to rebuild your life from the ground up, to choose deliberately instead of by default, to live without the invisible chains of someone else's approval. At first, empowerment feels foreign. You're used to centering someone else's needs, moods, and desires. Now you're asked to center your own. It's a radical act of self-respect, and it can feel uncomfortable because it's unfamiliar. But that discomfort is a signal of growth. Every time you act from self-respect rather than longing, you rewire your emotional habits. Every time you honor your boundaries rather than compromise them, you strengthen your identity. Think of detachment not as the end of a relationship, but as the beginning of sovereignty. Sovereignty means you own your time, your energy, your emotions, and your decisions. It means you are no longer living reactively, waiting for someone else to call, to text, to apologize, to see you. You're living proactively, creating your own experiences, shaping your own days, filling your own life. To do this, you have to set new standards. Standards for how you treat yourself, for how you allow others to treat you, and for how you spend your time. Those standards must be based on your values, not on fear of being alone. It's easy to think empowerment means building walls, but true empowerment is about building clarity. Clarity about what you want, what you will no longer tolerate, and who you are becoming. It's also about embracing vulnerability, but on your terms. Detachment doesn't make you cold or unreachable. It makes you self-contained. You can still love deeply, but now you choose to love from fullness, not from emptiness. You give because you want to, not because you're afraid to lose. That's the essence of healthy connection. This is where you begin to transform your daily life. You fill your schedule with things that expand you. Classes, projects, friendships, physical activities, spiritual practices, learning experiences. You begin to rebuild your life with curiosity rather than desperation. The more you focus on your own growth, the less emotional real estate the past takes up. You may also notice your relationships shifting. Some friendships will deepen because they reflect your new self-respect. Others may fade because they were built around your old patterns. This can feel like another round of loss, but it's really a sign of alignment. You're clearing space for people and opportunities that match your growth. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Detachment is how you make the unconscious conscious. You see the patterns, why you stayed, why you tolerated, why you gave so much power to someone else. Seeing those patterns clearly allows you to choose differently. You stop calling it fate and start calling it choice. Now you create from a place of awareness. You're no longer trying to fix someone else or earn their affection. You're no longer confusing attachment for love. Instead, you're cultivating a sense of self so strong and grounded that any future relationship becomes a choice, not a necessity. This is how you prevent repeating the same story with a different face. To sustain this transformation, you must keep nurturing your inner world. That means practices like journaling, therapy, meditation, prayer, creative outlets. Whatever helps you stay connected to yourself. You can also create rituals to honor your growth. For example, Write letters to the version of you who stayed too long, thanking her for surviving, forgiving her for the compromises, and releasing her from blame. Symbolic acts like this can help you integrate your healing into your identity. You'll also find it's easier to spot red flags in others and green flags in yourself. You start to notice who energizes you and who drains you. You become less tolerant of ambiguity and mixed signals, not because you're hardened, but because you've learned to respect your time and emotional bandwidth. Empowerment also means embracing solitude without shame. The ability to enjoy your own company is a superpower. It's not about avoiding connection. It's about no longer fearing your own presence. When you stop fearing solitude, you stop settling for company that diminishes you. As you live this way, you naturally begin to attract relationships and opportunities that align with your new self-respect. You won't have to perform or plead. You'll simply resonate with people who see you clearly because you see yourself clearly. Love, when it arrives again, won't feel like chaos. It will feel like clarity. It's important to note that empowerment doesn't mean you'll never feel hurt again. It means you now have the tools to navigate hurt without losing yourself. You've built a core of self-trust and self-loyalty that no external rejection can destroy. That's what emotional freedom really is. You may even reach a point where you can look back on the man who no longer loved you without bitterness. You can see him as a turning point rather than a villain. You can acknowledge your own part without shame and his part without hatred. That level of neutrality is not apathy, it's mastery. It means you're no longer defined by the experience. When you've fully integrated this lesson, you're able to approach the world differently. You start to see your life not as a series of people who failed you, but as a series of opportunities to evolve. Each ending becomes a chance to deepen your self-awareness, refine your boundaries, and embody your values more fully. And perhaps the greatest reward of this transformation is that you finally stop asking for permission to live. You stop waiting for someone else to choose you, to validate you, or to tell you you're enough. You start living as if you already are, because you are. In practical terms, this might look like launching a business you've been dreaming about, moving to a new city, cultivating hobbies you never had time for, or simply creating a peaceful daily routine that honors your energy. It might look like rebuilding your finances, your friendships, your health, or your spirituality. These are not just distractions from heartbreak. They're the new scaffolding of your identity. You can even redefine what love means for you going forward. Rather than seeing love as something to earn, you can see it as something to share. Rather than seeing relationships as a place to find your worth, you can see them as a place to express your worth. That shift changes everything. The entire journey of detachment, from the painful realization that he no longer loves you, to the slow withdrawal of your energy, to the rebuilding of your identity, culminates here, in this moment of empowerment. What started as heartbreak has become liberation. What felt like the end has become the foundation for a life that is entirely yours. Detachment at its core is an act of self-respect. Healing at its core is an act of self-remembering. And transformation at its core is an act of self-creation. When you weave those together, you become someone who not only survives loss, but grows because of it. You are no longer the woman waiting for someone to return her calls, notice her worth, or validate her existence. You are the woman building a life so full, so authentic, and so aligned that no external rejection can undo it. That is the final stage of detachment. That is emotional freedom. Ready to take back your power and keep growing? Subscribe now and join thousands of others who are learning to heal, reclaim their identity, and transform heartbreak into strength. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our latest insights, tips, and empowering stories.